Thank you to ADEIL for having me, and I really appreciate as we get to talk about navigating shared waters, collaborative course design when the path isn't clear. I have an image, and there's a number of images that we'll see in here. I will be transparent. They were created using generative artificial intelligence, trying to create things in kind of a claymation style, just to kind of convey some of the ideas. Just to kind of, as far as kind of setting some expectations, if at any point you are having want to put a question in the chat, please feel free to. We will definitely have time for question and discussion as as the session wraps up. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be thinking about, as we think about collaborative course design, we're going to think about the some common course design roles. I again want to recognize that there's so many different situations, so you might be in something that's maybe a little bit different, but roles that I have found common. We will also be thinking about embracing ambiguity. Anytime that we have collaboration with multiple people, um, there's things that's going to be outside of our control. Maybe things a little nebulous, and we will lean in to talk about leaning into that. And also, again, just kind of how to move the course design process forward, especially if things feel stuck. What I'd love you to do, and if anyone would be willing to share in the chat the answer to this question. So I have a picture. It's a claymation scene of Badgers. I'm from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, so we're all about our Wisconsin Badgers. And I have some claymation Badgers who are working in an office setting, and we have one who's helping two other people with that copy machine. As we talk about collaboration, would any of you be willing to just kind of put in the chat maybe something that you've learned from a colleague over the years? Maybe it's something that's made your work easier. Maybe it's just in a concept or an idea or a framework that you never really thought of before. Yes, how to effectively use Teams. That could be I don't know if that refers to the Microsoft app and all its features. It could just be frameworks for connecting with each others. I see ideas to support students online who are struggling with academic skills. Again, being able to learn from people who have been in those situations. And I know it's right on there, this image that I included, but I can think of jobs that I've had of like, this copy machine is super cool, and I love that I can have handouts, and I have no idea like what just happened or how to fix that jam that just happened. So I think of coworkers I've had who've showed me, and I've been able to share what I've learned from them. Yes, how to manage time wisely. That is that is amazing. Yeah, and keeping all project info organized in regards to teams and people helping each other with technology. Love it. Thank you so much for sharing that context, sharing that information. So again, I'm thinking of three primary roles in situations that I've seen when thinking about collaborative course design. Again, there are lots of other things that exist, but when I think about collaborative course design, I think about the instructors, the people who are actually going to be delivering the course. I think about the instructional designers or maybe educational developers, people who are going to be helping maybe design. And I think about the administration, the people who are leading things who um, just kind of make things possible. Now, there is another element as I was preparing this presentation that I was reading about. And here I've included a picture of a student working at a computer on their coursework. And so I want to acknowledge there is a body of literature that talks about how we can include students with the course design process. I will say at the very least, reading their course evaluations can be helpful. I will readily admit that is a whole nother topic that we can go into. So I will say that student course design collaboration, just being aware that it exists, but at least for today, thinking of it as another topic for another time. Now, again, I'd like you to just kind of think through in the back of your mind. some sort of collaboration that maybe started out pretty rough. I have two images. On the first one on the left, we have these kind of animated badgers, and they're in a boat, and the storm is really, really bad, and then they're really, really scared. But as we go to the other side of the slide, they seem to have gotten through that storm, and they're feeling pretty good about it. So just kind of keep in the back of your mind if about situations you've had that maybe started out rough when collaborating with other people, but when you got through it, it's like, yeah, that was worthwhile. That was valuable. So first off, why even collaborate? This is something I was reading. There was a survey done. Deloitte, I think is how you pronounce it. They're a consulting company based in Australia. When I was researching about collaboration, their survey came up a bunch. But they found that when employees are collaborating, their research suggests that the people who are working with other people, even though they're making time for meetings, et cetera, their work is actually getting done faster than if they were doing it by themselves. 73%, so almost all, for sure a super majority, feel that they're doing better work when they're working with other people. 60%, more than half, felt they were more innovative, and a little more than half just kind of felt more satisfied with the work. Now, I will very much recognize that in the world of course design, even though I'm talking about teams, there are worlds where there are instructors who are working independently. Maybe they just don't have the resources. And so I guess I would just encourage for anyone who is in a situation like that, who is interested in collaboration, is there any sort of community of practice you can join? Some sort of colleagues where you can bounce ideas around each other? And then I have an image of a light bulb. And what I found when I collaborate, um, and yes, I just in my own work, I'm fortunate that ideas come fairly quickly. I'm able to get things done. But what I really find engaging is when I'm working with people and they'll share some sort of idea. And that sparks something on my end that I would have never came out by my own, but all of a sudden, just kind of what they've shared about it, like, oh, what we could do this, and we could do that, and we could do that. And then all of a sudden, they start taking that and sharing ideas that come to them. Just that recognition that when we get people in the room, we're hearing ideas and perspectives that may never emerged. So again, let's thinking about those roles. And again, this is not all inclusive. I know I've been fortunate to work with wonderful media people who don't make this list. But again, if I just kind of think about simplifying the bucket to instructors, instructional designers, and admin, thinking about those roles. When I think about instructor, I think about the person who is the subject matter expertise. They know the most in just about any room they're going to be on about their topic. They also are the ones who are actually working with the students. And in my perspective, they have a pretty good idea about what's going to work in their context and with the students that they're working with. When I think about instructional designers, I think a lot about project management. And by that, I mean, they often lead the collaboration. Maybe they're involved with kicking off a first meeting and then just kind of going through about, boy, if we could try to have this done by this date or this done by this date and reach this milestone. Generally, educational designers are teaching and learning experts. They've gotten to work on a lot of courses. And I also like to think about them being involved with the user experience. Maybe in an online course, they're working in creating the online space. They're designing how users are interacting with it. And even in other modalities, even a face-to-face class, instructional designer can still give ideas for how that class time could be used. Again, that student or user experience. Again, administrative, they are the program leadership. They're making a lot of the kind of the higher level decisions. And they also have a superpower in being able to connect the dots between, let's say, the enrollment of the student population and that specific course and how it fits into the program and how this course connects to this course and that course. So we have lots of people working in different contexts. Just again, kind of sharing my own perspectives. I have been an online instructor for over a decade. My current full-time role is as an instructional designer. And so a lot of the work I think about those different hats that I've worn. I've done some administrative support, but I have never been, let's say, the dean of a college. So, just to kind of provide some transparency just for what shaped my own experiences. Now, first, if I may offer some considerations for instructors, these are things that I've learned from myself being an instructor and things that I've learned while supporting other instructors. Again, I want to encourage anybody who is part of a designing a course, who is in that instructor or teacher or professor, whatever your title is, you are the one who really knows what is going to work based on your experience in the classroom. And I would encourage you to lean on that. And at any point, share those experiences with the people that you're collaborating with. And and I know this can vary from program to program, but at least in courses that I've been involved with, the instructor generally has the final say, at the very least, of what the content is going to be and what the assessments can look like. Obviously, still take advice and you learn from best practices from people who get to work in a variety of disciplines, but also feel free to trust your gut. And if something isn't resonating, at least ask for a little bit more support as for why you make should consider that. Here is a quote from an article I was reading. Faculty instructional designers are on building successful collaborative relationships. Faculty members indicated that they look to instructional designers for help with other areas such as pedagogy, best practices for designing online experiences, and learning how to teach online. I would just give this opportunity for instructors who I realize are super busy and there's no shortage of things to do. But anytime that you get to be part of a collaborative experience, see what you can learn from it. I know the first time that I was ever an instructor designing a course with an instructional designer, for me, it was just great learning about Bloom's taxonomy and backwards design and best practices. And so much of my teaching before that had been, if you asked me like why, like Rich, why is that part of your course? It's like, I don't know, because that's how my instructors did it. And it seems to be going okay. And just to kind of embrace that, like we can we can be learning new things. If I may share, again, my own experience after I started getting involved with online course design, the program I was part of, I had the opportunity. I was asked if I would be able to basically like lead a blog, just kind of share course resources with instructors. I have on this screenshot, I apparently found that the Paris Museum was putting, 100,000 images available for public use. And I know when I was talking with instructors, with fellow instructors, we were always saying like, where are you getting your resources to like for really cool imagery? Here was something. I also would share if there was just program-wide updates, like, oh, here's where you can have a consult with our academic technology department. It was a chance for me to be a part of a community where instructors were learning from instructors. And again, I would just kind of encourage anytime you can be a part of that to learn from each other. That's valuable stuff. Now, a situation that I've been in. I know when I've been in the instructor in the course design that I've gotten behind on what I needed to do. I know when I've been an instructional designer working with instructors, again, super busy. Sometimes they get behind. And my best advice I can give when that happens, first off, it's okay. Like life is life and things pop up and there's never enough hours in the day. I know there's always that temptation to skip that planning meeting. Like, can I just have a little bit more time to work on what I would work on? And I would just encourage there is still value in attending that planning meeting. Maybe one of the reasons that as an instructor you ran out of time is just not knowing where to start, or maybe looking for maybe an easier way to do what you're trying to do. And my encouragement is that planning meeting might still offer some ideas or best practices to help move things forward. Then again, I have this picture of me just again thinking about learning opportunities. This is me wearing my instructor hat, and I had the awesome opportunity to go into the media studio, and those folks are rock stars, and they make me look like a rock star with our lectures. And anytime I've been part of a course design as the instructor, just soaking in as much information, again, whether it's just different assignment types that I've worked with other courses, or this was me being in a media studio. I don't get that opportunity all the time when I'm working on something, but just kind of think, oh man, like, yeah, like they have a teleprompter and I can just read off a script and how much easier that makes my life. And it's like, I don't have a teleprompter at home, but like I have a screen I could read off. Like maybe we can work something with there. Again, just kind of thinking, what am I learning from here that I might be able to use in my future opportunities? Now, things that instructional designers can keep in mind, or academic support staff, or educational developers, whatever your title is. If your job is, again, I mentioned being in the recording studio for my lectures and the people who made me feel like a rock star, as you think about how you can help your instructors feel like rock stars. The big thing, as much as possible, take the time to get to know the instructor, get to know the course, and try to devote as much time as possible at the beginning of that development to just really learn what that course is about. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you have an idea and you think it's like a really, really great idea. And you mention to the instructor, and they're just not feeling it. First off, again, remember they are the ones who are going to be teaching that course at the end of the day. So it's fair to trust their gut reaction, but maybe you're really thinking like, I really think this has a lot of potential. We've been looking through the course evaluations. Students are saying that they're looking for this or looking for that or looking for that. Is there any way that you can go back to the scholarship of teaching and learning for support? It's one thing to say, hey, my name is Rich and I have an idea. It's another to say, I was reading this journal article the other day, or this, teaching and learning blog, and we were talking about pain points that you were having in your course, or things again that we saw in the course evaluations, and to be able to come in with evidence as to why you think your idea is going to work rather than just leaving it to your opinion versus the instructor's opinion. Again, more considerations for some instructional designers. Here I have some quotes again from the 2018 faculty instructional designers on building successful collaborative relationships. If you don't create that space where the faculty feels excited and actually safe and all these things combined, you're not going to have a productive collaboration. Again, it's worth noting that a lot of instructors, when it comes to designing the course, they've kind of been on an island. They've had to work on their own, and this might be the first time where they've had like another people offer ideas. Whatever you can do to just kind of feel like whatever you're doing is empowering an instructor rather than telling them what to do. I think that's going to help. And I love this quote. This isn't my words. This is like literally a quote from an article. I would say strategy number one is to shut up. Let the faculty do the talking. Again, hear from the faculty instructor, what's going well, what's not going well. I have two images, and it comes to two different approaches when I think about instructional designers as they're um, as they're starting the course design process. The first is a picture of a magnifying glass, and I picture the inspector or the researcher trying to learn. And then the second image that I have is a cup of coffee. And I think there are two equally valid ways to approach if you're an instructional designer when you're meeting that instructor for the first time. There are some people who actually like doing research. And by that I mean, looking up the instructor's biography online. Again, this is public information. Look up their faculty webpage, find out about what they're interested in. I've even heard from some instructional designers who they'll actually try, if possible, to read some articles that the instructor that they're working with has written, just to try to better get to know their world. And if that's something that works for you, that's great. Go for it. Something that works more personally for me, again, I have that picture of a cup of coffee. And by that, I picture meeting with somebody, maybe for the first time over coffee. and you're getting to learn each other, about each other for that first time. And again, maybe you're even in a situation where you can physically meet up with the instructor and grab a cup of coffee. And maybe it's just a virtual coffee session or just some sort of informal meeting where you're getting to learn more about, the people that you're working with. Whatever that is, and maybe it's even a little bit of both. The big takeaway here is making sure that we're being intentional about having a chance to learn about the people we're working with and a chance to build some rapport. And again, the big thing is ask questions. Anytime that I, as an instructional designer, am meeting with an instructor, I have some sort of framework in mind about what I can learn from the instructor about the course to just kind of move things forward. One of my go-to questions is asking for a temperature check. And be like, so before we even dive into any details, let's just get a temperature check. How are you feeling about what we're about to do? And it's possible like, oh yeah, this is great. I had a chance to work with an instructional designer 2 years ago and we did this and that and it was great. And I'm excited about working on this, or I know this is something I need to change. Maybe that temperature check is, I have never taught online. I have no idea what I'm doing. Rich, how can you help me? But just to kind of open that door is vital. I think it's worthwhile to talk through the process. Again, my full-time job is as an instructional designer. Like this is what I do. But the people that I'm working with don't necessarily know what that process looks like. And I would just encourage to just kind of just let people know, just kind of set some expectations. One of my favorite go-to questions is just kind of asking the instructor, if you were to run into one of your students 5 years from now, what's one big takeaway that you hope that they still have? And again, this is a chance to look for just some major goals of the course, or just to kind of identify what's really important. And then I'm a big fan of why questions. When we ask instructors why, it's one of those things that it can be such a simple question and it can be maybe even a silly question, but the answers we get can be profound. Um, that's something one of my colleagues I had a chance to join in. His name's Tom Tobin, just for some to make sure I'm citing my sources on that one. But when I've used that in my own consultations, I remember I was meeting with someone. We were talking about generative artificial intelligence, and the instructor is telling me about the assignments they have. And so I preface this like, okay, this is a question that's probably going to seem really basic or maybe obvious to you, but why? Why are we using those assessments? And it's an opportunity to just kind of talk through like, well, we need to have students learn about this, or this is important for students to be able to go through that. And again, as someone, when I think back to my first time teaching in a college classroom, you would ask me why. The answer is like, well, that's how my instructors did it. And again, it's a baseline that's better than nothing. But then you can kind of probe some questions like, so what do you student want your students to really get from this? Um, this is something that again I just recently read, and it's kind of come into again back. I remember back to that the AI consult that for me has been empowering. Don't fall into that trap of always providing an answer to everything when you start, that you always want to prove your knowledge and prove that you know things. So it's very tempting to provide answers to faculty. But in order to get much more meaningful and deeper exchange, what really works better is for faculty to come to their own conclusions. I think it's really great to empower faculty to um, kind of get to where they want to go. And maybe as instructional designers, we can guide them. I also know that it's as someone who's supposed to be a teaching and learning expert, there's always that pressure of like, boy, I got to make sure I have my answer. I got to make sure I know what I'm talking about. And it's totally fair to say that, you know, that's a really good question. I have thought about that. Let me think about that one. I'll do some reading between now and the next time we meet. Again, just give everyone grace, even yourself. And then just some considerations that I would offer for administration. As much as possible, what support are you able to give your faculty? If they're taking on a new role, especially if this is extra work, is it at all possible to give them financial support for this? I have been really fortunate that when I've been part of course designs as an instructor, to have some sort of financial compensation. Does it necessarily like cover every hour I put in? Maybe, maybe not, but it's something to still show I'm valued. And if money isn't possible, what sort of dedicated time? How can you rework their work schedule so that this is something that is feasible? Um, as much as possible, is there some way so that you can offer, as an administration, faculty, instructional designers to experience each other's work? I mentioned that one of the greatest joys I had when I was primarily an online instructor was when my administration, my leadership told me, like, okay, you had a chance to learn about teaching and learning and course design. Rich, let's see if we can carve out some of your time so that you can just share best practices with your coworkers. It's helpful. It's amazing. And again, time to collaborate. If there is not much time, like the minimum viable product is really the only realistic expectation. But if there's honestly time where people can bounce around ideas, that is going to be immensely helpful. I think it's also worthwhile, especially if there's someone new to your program. It could be a new instructor, it could be a new instructional designer. Just give some sort of examples about, like, yeah, this is a course that we put together. We really like how this came out, or some sort of metrics or rubrics, if nothing else, just so that everybody is on the same understanding of what we're doing. I have been part of collaborations with instructors where the understanding was we can only meet once, and I'm just going to share a couple ideas. Use what works in the little time you have left. I've been in situations where it's very time intensive and we're meeting for almost a year. And I think just kind of communicating what the expectations are in all of those. Here's something we can all be keeping in mind. Everybody from day one, as much as possible, clearly define what those responsibilities and timeframes are. It's going to make life a lot easier if everybody's just on the same page of who's doing what and by when it needs to be done. I think it's also worth noting that everyone's skills are just vital. And as much as possible, what can we learn from each other? Um, ask lots of questions, lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. There is um, there's no stupid question. And I think it's especially important just to kind of make sure that everyone is on the same page. And fresh eyes are super helpful. Again, anytime that I'm working on by myself, I can get lost in the weeds. And anytime that I have another pair of eyes just to look at it, like, oh, wow, I never really thought about it that way. And again, this is one of the reasons that it is so important to ask clarifying questions. I have this picture of a question mark, and I have the text clarifying terms of modules and classes and quizzes. These are three examples where I've been in situations where I'm realizing, whoa, like we are not all using terms the same way. I think about the term module. So I work, Canvas is the learning management system I use. We organize content in modules, and I think about modules just as a chunk of content. And I'm talking with the instructor, and I've been talking about, yeah, in module two, we'll do this, and module three is going to have this assignment. And then I'm talking with the instructor, and I think we're talking about module two. And the instructor says, like, yeah, I was looking at the module 5 and 6 considerations, and I want to make sure to talk about this in the slide. And I start asking questions like, are we all on the same page? And this is a science-based course. And basically the science, the field was using the term module just to categorize scientific concepts. I was using the term module to think about class organization. We had a couple minutes where we were kind of tripping over each other to understand what on earth we were talking about, and just to kind of stop, like, I just need to make sure we're using our terms the same ways. Another instructor that I was working with was talking about classes. I was thinking of classes of, okay, we're in chemistry 101. This is different than chemistry 102 versus chemistry 103. They were using the term classes to talk about different class sessions. Like this is the first week of class or the second week of class. So again, just being on the same page. Quizzes is another one. Again, working with the LMS Canvas. Quizzes is a tool, and they can be used in so many different ways. And I think it was just a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about quizzes as in the quiz tool, and the instructor was using it in a different context. Again, not everyone uses the terms the same way, and that's okay. And just kind of recognizing whatever we can do. Again, considerations. Here's just a quote again. Wonderful article of building a collaborative instructor-instructional designer relationship. A lot of the concerns surrounding the building of online programs can be alleviated if proper attention is given to fostering a collegial and collaborative work environment. Again, just from the beginning, just thought about how are we gonna, what if there's some people who I've just been in meetings with, like, so like, well, how do we handle conflict? What are we gonna do when that happens? Just kind of establishing kind of normative practices, and it is essential. This is from faculty instructional designers on building successful collaborative relationships. It is essential to leave room for ongoing or open discussions and possibly even disagreements to ensure the creativity in finding the best solutions to support student learning. I think it's great to acknowledge that not everyone is going to be in agreement about like what the best practice is. And I think maybe just kind of deciding of like, okay, who's going to decide what to do for there? I think that that has a lot of value. Okay, here's a great quote. People control conflict. Conflict does not control people. Which brings me to something that I've actually had a chance to be talking about in a number of presentations that I've been giving recently, and that's circles of control. In my own life and my own work, I like to think a lot about whatever I'm working with. And just to kind of share what's on the screen, I have three circles. The smallest of those circles is the circle of control. What am I in control of? What can I directly change? The circle outside of that is the circle of influence. Um, and by that, I mean, I may not be able to absolutely direct where something is going or be in control of it, but I might be able to kind of guide or shape where it might go. And then I have outside of that the circle of concern, which is everything outside of my control. I can't do anything about it. You know, as I think about what we can control or influence, as an instructor, this might not be your choice to be teaching this specific course in this specific course modality. That might be outside of your control. But if all of a sudden you kind of find yourself in a situation where you're collaborating with new people, maybe you can be in control of, boy, what is a part of my course that I wish was running a little more smoothly? What's a question that I've had? What's been on my wish list? And just kind of ask, is that something we can work on? Maybe if you're an instructional designer, maybe you're waiting on somebody else to get content to you so that you can work on it, so that you can upload it into the learning management system. And maybe you find yourself where you're waiting and you're not in control of the next steps. I would just encourage with you, is there a chance that you can review content, or maybe this is just a time where you're excited to work on some other side project while you wait for that to come in. You're in control of how you're using your time. And again, if you're the administration, you may not be able to control the budget, but is there some way that you can be in control, as far as providing compensation for faculty? But is there something you're in control of about opportunities to provide or some sort of additional support? Looking at the barriers that can come up. This is from Easing Instructional Design or Faculty Conflicts. Again, a potential barrier, again, I think I just kind of mentioned it. Perhaps the faculty member didn't have a choice on being part of that. That can be a barrier if we're starting from a point of conflict where This is a big change, and I'm not liking it. The barrier of time. I mentioned this before, but if there is only 2 weeks before the course starts and people are meeting for the first time, there's only so much that's realistically going to get done. And just being aware of that. And then from instructional designers' perceptions and experiences of collaborative conflict with faculty, for some faculty, being asked to collaborate with instructional designers can be a significant adjustment and potentially encroach on their professional space. Again, if I'm putting on my instructional designer hat on, and I'm thinking of working with an instructor who's maybe not collaborated before, their identity has been coming up with the assignments, or it's very possible that their identity has been coming up with the assessments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my very presence can be a change or in conflict with how they've identified the work that they've done. I think just acknowledging that and just recognizing that that's there. It might be outside of our control whether or not we're, moving forward or, how it's going to happen, but we can just like acknowledge it and empathize with it. Again, I think potential barriers can happen when roles aren't valued. Um, as an instructional designer, it's easy to maybe look at like, oh, that instructor, they sure are stuck in their ways or something along those lines. Um, Sometimes it can happen if an instructor is looking at the instructional designer as like, oh yeah, they're just the tech support. That's great, and no idea they have could be helpful. Again, just reinforcing, making sure we're valuing what everyone is doing. Miscommunication. I mentioned those potential terms that can be used in different ways. That can be a potential barrier. And so just kind of being aware of when that's happening. If I may go on just a brief tangent, I have an image that says problem-based learning. For anyone and I have a link to the University of Connecticut Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. If I may quote for them, for anyone who's not familiar what this is, problem-based learning is a student-centered pedagogy based on the constructivist learning theory about collaboration and self-directed learning. And with this, students are creating knowledge and comprehension of a subject through the experience of solving open-ended problems without a defined solution. And anytime we have on the with problem-based learning, students are assigned a problem, they identify what they need to solve, and they learn to apply to solve the problem. Isn't that a lot of what course design is? The problem is going to be like, hey, let's work on this course. And what makes things nebulous with course design is there's no one perfect way about like, yep, if we do it this way, this is what's going to happen, and all the students will thrive and write us the best, course evaluations they've ever written. It's going to be great. But there is no one way to do it. There's lots and lots and lots of good ways to do it. And as we encounter obstacles along the way, um, there's no end to what those obstacles can look like, and there's no one perfect way to work through that. It's a lot about collaboration. And as I was reading about this, it's related to there's this article supporting the development of collaboration feedback skills in instructional designers. It was about a course that was for people in an instructional design degree program. And it was basically let's just kind of the idea was let's as part of the students' assignments, let's get them used to collaborating. Let's get them used to developing their teamwork skills and communication skills, things that they'll be doing as professionals working on course design. So here's one quote from a student as they were working with this problem-based learning how to communicate. During the development process, I lost the critical eye. A fresh pair of eyes and a new perspective proved tremendously helpful in evaluating whether or not the instruction does what it is intended to do and whether the users are able to successfully complete, which is, again, another way of saying, I just needed fresh eyes to look at this with me. Um, This is from a student who, again, was learning about collaboration. My best work is a result of receiving feedback from my classmates and having the opportunity to review and think about their work. Oftentimes, I'll critique my classmates' work and realize that some of the components I'm critiquing are lacking in my own project. Again, it's totally fair to, again, make sure we're collegially doing this, but looking at each other's work for everyone involved in the process and just kind of offering ideas. And as we do that, we can realize like, oh, I guess I never thought about that with my own component of what I was working on. And then this other quote, an interesting observation was made during the analysis that students tended to use the feedback discussions as a way to structure their own work and potentially avoid procrastination. The feedback check-ins were scheduled prior to submitting an artifact for grading to ensure that students had an opportunity to get feedback and make changes they found important. To summarize, they were checking in with each other, and through the check-in process, we're realizing like, oh, I guess I need to fix this. And it helped them avoid procrastination. Again, when we are routinely checking in with each other, that's an opportunity just to kind of make sure that we keep making progress. And then this last point, often students are not ready to truly work together, but rather prefer cooperative or even individualistic learning with minimum knowledge co-construction, which is another way of saying this student just worked on this part, and this student worked on this part, and this student worked on that part. And that can be tempting even with professionals to just kind of do that divide and conquer, like, yep, I'll tackle this thing, you'll tackle this thing, we'll tackle it, you'll tackle this thing. We'll just kind of duct tape it together when we're all done. Um, but we miss out on a lot of collaboration that we can do that. I have just to kind of as we wrap up and get to some discussion, two quotes to consider. Um, this is from instructional designers' perceptions and experiences of collaborative conflict with faculty. Emerging from the literature is a depiction of a collaborative relationship between instructional designers and faculty that is not only cordial, but also fluid, complicated, and contentious at times. Again, fluid, it may change who's working on what. And as long as everyone's in agreement, like, that's okay. And as far as contentious, people might have different opinions about what's the best way to move forward. And I guess I would just encourage, as long as we're just kind of professionally looking for that way forward, that's good stuff. And then this is in terms of from the article Instructional Design, a collaboration or a consultation. In terms of collaboration in educational contexts, Goulet et al. Defined it as more than simply dividing up the labor. It involves bringing people and group together for a common purpose, resulting in some kind of transformation in the participants. Again, rather than just you do this and I'll do this and I'll do this, I mentioned kind of the beginning about this person shared this idea. Like, I never thought about it. And so I have this new idea that emerged. And then my new idea can spark new ideas from other people. Again, as we recap, we talked about the different course design roles. We have people with different expertise, and that's okay. Embrace ambiguity. There's no guarantee when we get people in a room together what's going to happen. But again, I strongly think there's no one perfect option. There's lots of good options, and let's see what can kind of emerge. And then how to move forward. Keep meeting, keep communicating as much as possible. Maybe identify the most pressing items to confirm or a time frame, and just kind of move from there. I've summarized a lot of what we've talked about today into a little tip sheet. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put this link in the chat for anyone who is watching this video at a future time on YouTube. You will see this link in the video descriptions, but it just kind of summarizes those roles we talked about, what they do. I would say again, for instructors, just be open as much to new perspectives and ideas. Trust your gut. For instructional designers, listen, ask questions, bring in evidence. And for administration, the more time and support that you can provide, the better. Again, I love thinking about those circles of control. As you collaborate, where does your energy have the biggest impact? And I would say your energy, as much as possible, put your energy to what you can control and influence to make that biggest um, impact. And then as we wrap up, I would encourage if anyone has a collaboration that maybe started out kind of rough, but you triumph through some adversity. We have that image of the kind of terrified badgers going through the bad storm, but then the badgers are happy in the next one, and they got through it. In fact, actually, I'll just kind of share if anybody maybe wants to share a story of maybe a collaboration where, boy, that's not like things didn't go that great, but like it worked. I would ask probably, avoid specifics as far as names or courses that you worked on. But if any, does anyone have yeah, no, thank you for the imagery. Yeah, it's again generative artificial intelligence. Just we can use it as a tool to kind of, add some life, add some fun to our imagery. Um, if anybody wants to share in the chat, maybe something like, boy, like I had no idea how this was going to like work, but like I actually learned through the process. If anyone wants to put on the chat, and I'll kind of create a space if anybody wants to unmute and talk about it, you're welcome to. But it's also zero pressure. There is no obligation to share that. If this just is a rhetorical exercise in thinking about it, that's okay too. And with that, I guess I will, as we wrap up, um, let's use this time for any questions that anyone might have. But I'd also like to ask, like, if I can collaborate with you, I'm curious, what of the ideas that I've mentioned, what are resonating? And for again, if anyone who's watching this video in the future and wants to send me an email, that's great too. And what are some different perspectives that you have? Gloria, I see the mention of the temperature check. Um, Not to put you on the spot, Gloria, would you be willing to maybe say a few words about that? And if that's not feasible, that's okay too.
Um, just a lot of times, you brought a lot of great points out, and
Oh, thank you.
especially the temperature check, because a lot of times I just go and go on. I listen and move on, listen, move on, but forget to say, how would this work out for you, or what are your thoughts about, how are you feeling right now about what we're talking about or what we're doing. I think that's going to be important moving forward in my process.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I see in the chat collaboration, just how important this process could be. Thank you so much, Benita, for sharing that. Um, if you're willing to unmute and talk a little bit more, I'd love to hear from that, but that is also totally optional. I will leave that up to you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
I just think collaboration has just been such a powerful force in my life. I have worked in education for a long, long time, and I am currently teaching online for our Gen 101 at UAGC, which I
Sure.
love, 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 love. And I think collaboration means that you can just pick someone else's brain and get some really good thoughts and some ideas that you would have never even thought about. So I'm really, really a strong advocate for collaboration. I have worked with Quality Matters at you at
Oh,
AGC,
sure.
which taught me all about that whole process of course designing and all the intricate pieces that go along with that process. So I've had that opportunity, which was a great experience as well. So yeah, I just think collaboration without it, you just don't get the pieces and all those really good nuggets that can go along with your end result. Without it, everybody, like you said, if everybody's doing their own thing and it's like, no, let's just come together at the end. No, let's come together in the middle, at the beginning and at the end to form some really good thoughts. So I thank you so much for this presentation.
Oh, thank
Great,
you.
great stuff.
Thank you. And I really appreciate that feedback. And you, Yen, I'd love to hear from you too.
First of all, thank you so much for inviting me, Rich.
You're very
This is my
welcome.
first time attending a meeting. So I'm also an instructional designer working with Rich. We actually just finished a collaboration project
Yes.
recently. So I first of all want to also thank you. I will second what Gloria said about the temperature check. I will also say thank you, Rich. I think you're very good at kind of like checking in to see how everybody feel. So that's a great reminder because a lot of times we're under so much like the tight deadline and stuff like that, I tend to also just get into like, we got to get this done and like
Yep.
forget to check in like how everybody is feeling about the collaboration process. And then the second thing is, I was wondering, can I ask you a question about like maybe 3 slides ago, you had something
Yeah.
about,
Let's see if I can
is
find
this
it.
is this a collaboration or a consultation?
Oh, yeah. That was from
Yeah,
an
could you
article.
say a little more about like how do you see collaboration versus consultation?
Yes, yes. And a lot of times it depends on the context. And my understanding, and I should be careful as I read the article a little while ago and gathered my quotes, but if I remember it entirely, it's looking at any sort of collaboration between, let's say, whoever's teaching and whoever the academic support staff is. And is this, I would say, a collaboration? I would think of that as a long, at least in my own understanding, a kind of long-term course design. We're meeting regularly. This is not a course that starts in 2 weeks. This is maybe a course that starts in half a year, maybe longer. And we're bringing lots of people, or at the very least, we're getting more than one perspective. At the very least, an instructor, an instructional designer, and we're thinking through. And a consultation, um, I think the article is framing it is a consultation is maybe the academic staff is just kind of offering some ideas. Maybe an instructor works with them, maybe they don't. And it can also put this dynamic of the instructional designer as maybe a service or a concierge role. And there are, I'll say there's a time and a place for all of those. Again, I've mentioned like if the course starts in 2 weeks, there is only so much collaboration that can happen. And I think in that sort of situation, looking at it as that consult is totally fair. And I think even respectful of everybody's rules involved. I've been in those a number of times where I'm only able to meet with an instructor once because there's only so much instructional designer to go around across an entire campus. And sometimes it's just to at scale as much as possible. We just serve as a thought partner for one, maybe two meetings, and then everyone kind of goes on their way. Does that answer your question, Yu Yen?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like there are times for all those roles, and sometimes during the collaboration, you are still kind of like a consultant,
Yeah,
right? Like that role kind of keeps
yeah.
coming up. You might have shared the link to the slide deck at the beginning. I came
Ooh,
a few minutes late.
I did not. Let me
You did not. Oh, okay. Because I just want to see what else the article says about those aspects.
absolutely. And yeah, I'll put those links for anyone who's in the chat right now who wants to take a look at it. And for anyone who is watching this in the future, first thank you future watchers for joining us. And we'll
Mhm.
have all the links to these in the video description so that you can see those slides too.
Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. We have just a little bit of time left. Just to share some collaboration opportunities with the Association for Distance Education and Independent Learning. We have a conference coming up October 1st, 2025. Um, it's not too late to get in that conference proposal if you'd like to collaborate with ADEIL. We also have various awards, a support service award, a course award, um, research awards, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're able to join us for our October 1st virtual conference, um, we'd love to have you join us. And I think with that, let's hope all our collaborations are successful and happy and good.